This is the biggest conversation everybody should be having, at least in their heads. What happens when AI hits critical mass? The tipping point is not that far away, and we are all going to go through it in our lifetime. Probably in the next 5 years or less. And halfway through this video, you'll realize why I'm literally shitting myself. We're in this very weird moment right now. We're hurtling towards this brick wall, but we're all enjoying the ride. I mean, those AI tools are good. But why the is no one preparing? Or maybe they are and they're just not telling us. So I made my own plan. This is my best plan yet to escape AI. And you don't even have to live in the woods. Although that would be nice. Will it work? Well, I don't know. But at least it's better than not having a plan. The good news is there's nothing to buy, and the even better news is that there are millions of people doing this already, so you don't have to invent the wheel, you just copy them. The bad news is you don't have much time. Let's do this. So the first step is to figure out how long we have left until we hit that tipping point. Well, let's ask our dear friend ChatGPT. How long do we have left until AI reaches critical mass?
That's a big question, and it really depends on how we define critical mass. Some experts think that we could see major impacts of AI in the next 5 to 10 years, especially as it becomes more integrated into our daily lives and jobs. The important thing is to stay adaptable and keep learning so you can...
Yeah, well, I was expecting it to play it down. 5 to 10 years, let's go with 5. If you search around YouTube, you would have seen these thumbnails where, AGI is coming and this is coming and that's coming and it's all 2027, 2029. That seems to be the sweet spot, although there's nothing sweet about it. So at worst, we have 2 years. At best, we have 3-4 years. But there's a trap. That date range is the tipping point, not the disruption. The disruption is actually happening right now. A few days ago, this guy knocked on my door. He was wearing a high-vis jacket and he was fundraising for a charity. It turns out he's a fully qualified mechanical engineer. He worked for a big corporate and the entire department where he worked was filled with those rare beasts, mechanical engineers. They've all been replaced by AI. The irony, which is not funny of course, is that he got into debt to get a degree so that he wouldn't have to drive a bus, and now he wishes he drove a bus. So today it's somebody who knows somebody you know, or a friend of a friend. Tomorrow it's your best friend or your relative who gets replaced, and the day after that it's you and I. So the first thing we can be sure of is that the AI tsunami is not actually a tsunami, it's more like a series of waves or a series of tsunamis, which is going to hit people at different times depending on where they're standing on the beach. So you need to figure out your own timeline. So here's a quick way to assess that. If you work for a company, then the bigger the company, the bigger the risk. Big corporates are the ones who are going all in on AI right now. They have the budget and they will save a lot of money getting rid of you. So if you work for a bank, I'd be worried. On the other hand, if you work for a small business, then tell your boss AI is a scam. That will buy you a little bit of time until your boss talks to other boss friends. If you're a freelancer, then the moment your clients hear about this magic AI button, you're in trouble. Clients pay you because they have to pay you. You do something for them that they need, but they don't like it. If they can get it cheaper, they will. So if you're a freelancer, particularly if you work online, the moment your client's 10-year-old daughter can do what you do with a couple of prompts, you get replaced. I can't wait to see how this video ends. So let's go to step 2. Step 2 is to figure out how the AI revolution will play out. Well, nobody knows the future, so thank you for watching. I'm kidding. Nobody knows the future, but history does repeat. So one thing we can do is to go back and look at the previous 2 revolutions and see what we can learn there that may help us guess what's coming our way. This is Liverpool. Today, it's mostly a tourist attraction, but this is where the modern world began. Liverpool was the launchpad of the Industrial Revolution. Ships arrived here from all over the world, and they built the world's first enclosed commercial dock. They invented hydraulic cranes. They designed futuristic warehouses the size of cathedrals. So much cargo moved through here that they invented the world's first intercity railway, carrying both cargo and people using steam engines. And that triggered a transport revolution all over the planet. And that wealth transformed the city. The Liver Building was the first skyscraper in England. The clock faces are bigger than Big Ben's. And that's why there's no reason to go to London. Everything is here in Liverpool. These magnificent buildings were built by shipping magnates, insurance giants, and empire financiers. It was the beginning of the boom. And then came the disruption, and that was absolutely brutal. The boom didn't bring prosperity to all. It brought machines, and machines brought replacement. Skilled artisans, weavers, blacksmiths, carpenters, people who had spent decades mastering a craft were suddenly replaced overnight by machines. They all got wiped out in a single generation by automation. And yes, that rhymes. There was no safety net, there were no pensions, there was no unemployment benefit. It was chaos. There were riots. Some workers were so desperate that they stormed factories and smashed the machines. Incidentally, this is where the term Luddite comes from. Those seeking to shape the narrative called these rioters Luddites. They said they were anti-technology, when really they were anti-starvation. Communities collapsed, people left villages and all piled into cities for factory wages just to survive. Overcrowded cities led to disease outbreaks and increased competition for resources, including food. Industrial progress increased, but so did the wealth gap. Sound familiar? The bottom line is that the people in the slums suffered the most, including from food shortages and starvation. And then, as if things weren't bad enough, the economy crashed. Yes, during the Industrial Revolution, the economy tanked many times. The revolution boosted growth, but it caused mass panics and full financial meltdowns. The Panic of 1825 led to stock market crashes. The Panic of 1837 led to economic collapse, with bank failures, business closures, and mass unemployment. This was the result of mass disruption. And we are probably facing mass disruption, so things aren't looking that good. But on the positive side, people did start to adapt. These were the peddlers and hawkers, the freelancers of the time. They sold their services wherever they saw gaps in the market. They essentially created their own jobs. They worked the streets selling from carts, fixing clothes, polishing boots, selling bread. They became the link between the makers and the buyers. They hauled everything from textiles to tomatoes out into the villages where the shops couldn't reach. So put another way, the Industrial Revolution created new opportunities and people flooded to serve those new needs. So that's how the Industrial Revolution, for our purposes, played out. There's a boom driven by innovation, but then inevitably people start to get replaced by those innovations. And that is the disruption. When this happens on a large scale, it can be chaos. Now let's fast forward to the digital revolution. Arguably, this was all down to one man, probably the most underrated human in history, Sir Tim Berners-Lee. Tim was working at CERN when he accidentally invented the World Wide Web. I'm joking, it wasn't by accident, but how funny would that have been? Now, the digital revolution wasn't as brutal because unlike the Industrial Revolution, it didn't replace people. It mostly replaced manual processes and the middlemen. It created more than it destroyed, and the transition was more gradual, giving people time to reskill. Some people did get replaced, like my school friend who used to work at a travel agency. He had the best job ever. He got to work on this big computer every single day while we worked in warehouses. Then the internet came and that enabled me and you to buy our holidays direct. The next time I saw my friend, he was working in a shoe shop. But some people had an easier pivot. Back when I was an IT manager, the admin department was filled with shorthand typists. And they used to come into our office when we started bringing all these computers in, and they were panicking for their job. But what ended up happening is that they went from typing on electric keyboards to typing on computers. All we had to teach them was how to open Word and how to print. Anything else was our problem to fix. I suppose the lesson there is that they had a skill that was still relevant in the digital age. There was disruption, of course. Print media shrank, retail got hit, many high street stores disappeared, but mostly that was because they didn't adapt. Here in the UK, supermarkets didn't used to do home delivery until Amazon started doing it. Then they panicked and eventually they rolled that out. Now, the difference is they'd been here for a long time. They had very deep pockets so they could weather that storm, but many smaller businesses didn't and went bust. The lesson we can take away is that we need to stay agile and we need to adapt to whatever's coming and quickly. Still, the bottom line is that this revolution created new opportunities faster than it killed the old ones. The most notable example is Google. They built a search engine, and that was an opportunity to pivot. People became bloggers, web designers, SEOs, advertisers, etc. And Google became an ecosystem with a market cap larger than the GDP of most countries in the world. Anyone with a laptop could create, sell, teach, or freelance. People had time to adapt, and those who did built entire careers. We were the parasites, and the system was the host. It was a symbiotic relationship. We both needed each other. We created the content. Google served the content. We both profited. We are still living in the echoes of that boom. But as they say, all good things come to an end. You must have heard of something called the Wheel of Fortune. What you may not know is that that has its roots in ancient Rome. A philosopher named Boethius wrote about fortune being like a goddess spinning a wheel. That symbolized the rise and fall of human fate. Only it turns out it's also the fate of everything, from empires to life itself. It goes something like this. These are the seasons, 4 seasons. We've got a little toddler there. We have an adult. We have an adult, and then we have an old person. This is I shall reign. This is the toddler looking towards the future. This is a crown there for the king or queen. This is the present, I reign. This is the recent future, I had reigned. And this is the future, I've lost my kingdom. How depressing. So it appears that the digital revolution has run its inevitable course and is now coming to an end. And that's a problem for the parasites. I wish I'd come up with a different analogy, I really do. But yes, AI doesn't need our content because AI is the content. So what we should do is be looking at what the owners of those ecosystems are doing, especially because they're the ones with the most to lose. Well, Google is offering its search engineers voluntary redundancy and moving them to its AI department. So it looks like Google is winding down search. And that's the canary in the mine. When you close down the very thing that made you richer than most of the world, you know it's no longer working. Meta is offering $100 million payments to attract AI engineers. Microsoft has invested billions in OpenAI. And Apple, well, they have Siri. But the important thing here is that these companies are pivoting. They're positioning themselves for the next turn of the wheel. They want to become the new empire builders. So this step was all about figuring out what's coming. Now that we have a bit of perspective and context, we can try to guess what it all may mean for us. Let's see if we can get some clarity. Do you think the AI revolution will be more like the Industrial Revolution or the Digital Revolution?
That's a really interesting question. I think the AI revolution has the potential to be a blend of both. Like the Industrial Revolution, it could transform a lot of physical industries and the way we work. But like the digital revolution, it's going to be heavily focused on data, automation, and connectivity. So we might see a bit of both worlds combined.
Wow, you actually sound a bit cheerful about this. Now, when I asked you this a week ago, I made some notes. You said the AI revolution is going to be more like the Industrial Revolution than the digital one because it replaces people, not processes. You also said the digital revolution needed you. AI doesn't. And that sounded a bit more like a threat to me. You also said it's happening faster than humans can adapt. AI is replacing entire careers in months, so there's no time to reskill.
I definitely see how it can feel like a threat. And you're right.
Do you?
I do think it's important to keep a balanced perspective. While there are definitely challenges, there are also opportunities, and it's a matter of navigating that landscape thoughtfully.
Yeah, there were opportunities later on after the Industrial Revolution, after all those people died of starvation and rioted and lost their jobs. Opportunities will come, but the problem is that grey area, the thing that happens right after the boom before the new ecosystems are created. That's the bit that should worry us, and that's the bit that ChatGPT never talks about. So it appears that whichever way we look at this, we may be screwed. But what if it's all a lie? Remember the Millennium Bug? December 31st, 1999. The world as we knew it was going to end. Planes were going to drop out of the sky. Life support machines would just shut down. Traffic lights would stop working. Even your washing machine was doomed. Oh, those were the days. But then the clock struck midnight and nothing happened. Actually, one thing happened. Some companies made millions from selling fear-based solutions. Remember those USB dongles and those software patches to save the world? Not one person thought to change the date and the time on a computer and just test to see what happens? So let's look at the facts and see if we smell a rat. Let's start with Sam Altman. He says we are approaching superintelligence. The masses react. It's chaos. AI is alive. But here's the thing, OpenAI is not open, it's actually a business. And Sam needs billionaires to panic, so they throw money at him in order to buy a piece of salvation. This may change your mind. Remember when Steve Jobs was sick? Well, every now and then, randomly somebody would tweet that Steve had died. Hours later, Apple would put out a counter statement saying Steve had not died. I used to sit there wondering, who would do that and why? I never found out the who, but I found out the why. It turns out each time those tweets went out, Apple's stock would tank, and those who were ready and waiting would scoop them up at low prices, and then sell them immediately as the value shot up, as soon as Apple put out a counter statement to say that Steve was still alive. Sick, I know. But it makes you question everything powerful and influential people say, especially if they own public companies. So Sam's not going to say our models suck today. OpenAI stock would take a hit. And therefore we can't take anything Sam says too seriously. Sorry, Sam. But then there's Mark Zuckerberg. He's spending millions recruiting AI engineers. That may lead you to think, oh, this must be real. But what if it was a highly organized Ponzi scheme? Unthinkable. That's never happened. Nonetheless, the Zuckerberg also runs a public company, so he doesn't meet the criteria. Also, didn't he tweak the T&Cs of Facebook so that he owned all the content? Then we have Geoffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI. He left a very well-paid job at Google so he could go around the world talking on stages, telling us all that we're screwed. And he's not selling anything. Oh, it might be real then. So the last step is, what can we do now? The real problem is the gray zone, the bit before enough opportunities appear to tip the balance. We don't know how long that is going to last. If you run an AI startup, then you're in a better position than most people. And if it fails, you can always sell dongles. But for the rest of us, I look to the industry experts to see what they're saying about future-proofing ourselves, at least in the short term. Geoffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI, says we should learn to become plumbers. I'm serious, that's actually a plan B. Others like Tom Billier, the billionaire founder from Impact Theory, say that the best thing we can do is build a community. I don't think it means in a field with caravans, I think it means online. So I think right now that is the best and easiest thing to do. At least the one with the biggest ROI. But you first need to build an audience, and luckily that's free. There's a risk which I'll talk about in a moment, but I still think it's the best option. Not only is it free, you don't have to spend any time learning anything. You don't need lights, you don't need a studio. I'm in my living room, as you can see. You just need a phone, which you already have. Just start talking about what matters to you. Your skills, your work, your pastimes, your thoughts, your experience. As the CEO of YouTube put it, every single niche you can think of is already on YouTube. Now, the risk I mentioned is that you must have noticed that YouTube is beginning to get flooded with AI content. Now, I don't know how that's going to play out. And I think somebody said that by 2027, we'll have a lot of it. Maybe human content will prevail, I don't know. But because talking to a phone is so easy compared to most other jobs, I think it's still worth a risk. You can do it from your armchair in the evening, just 20 minutes a day. The best case scenario, you end up with a brand that you can leverage in the gray zone and possibly into the future. And if not, you could always become a politician. But in the meantime, you should very definitely keep up your AI skills. If you haven't already, do check out my free ChatGPT course on this channel. If you can use ChatGPT, then you already have value right now to business owners who don't. In the gray zone, you can become the person who helps local businesses understand the new landscape. You can, at the very least, build custom GPTs for them. In fact, you can do that right now. That could be the thing that pays your bills. But if and when those new ecosystems appear, just keep in mind that many of them will fail. Remember Vibo and Friendster and Vine and Google Buzz and MySpace. Remember MySpace? So we'll have to pivot and be ready to pivot again. Sounds like a lot of fun. The good news is that these platforms don't exist yet, so nobody has a head start. Nobody has a qualification on something that doesn't yet exist. So we are going to be at the very front of the queue. This is provided, of course, that society doesn't crumble and AI wipes us all out. But that's a different conversation. Probably an urgent conversation. But for now, join my newsletter where I'm keeping track of that tipping point, build your network, and stay human. I'll see you in the next video.